Hello everyone and welcome to Sips and Stories. My name is Elizabeth and in today's video I will be discussing my winter TBR. So here in the Pacific Northwest where I live, we are expecting snow in the next couple of weeks. So I am going to be housebound and I need my books ready to go. So during the winter I like to read certain types of books, everything from classics to cozy children's stories to even some fairy tale retellings. So grab your favorite beverage and join me as I discuss these winter reads. The first book that I plan to read this winter is The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And this is a part of the Little House on the Prairie series. It's actually my favorite book from the series, and I know it's a lot of people's favorite book in the series. I was inspired to read it after watching the excellent PBS documentary about Laura Ingalls Wilder. So if you have not seen that documentary on PBS, I highly recommend that you check it out because it was so good. And in fact, in the documentary, they said that the real Long Winter was even harder than that she depicts it in the book. And in the book, it's tough. So if you're unfamiliar with the story, it's about the winter where the Ingalls family is living in a small town on the prairie, D. Smith, and the Indians come into the town and they warn the townspeople that this is one of the 7-year winters and that they need to prepare for it because it's going to be storm after storm. And they are so right because the storms start in October and they don't let up until April. So the trains and all the supplies cannot reach the town on the prairie. So everyone in town is kind of hoarding all their food and everyone gets very intense. And it's really interesting to see how the Ingalls family deals with this, and the resourcefulness of Charles Ingalls is amazing. And it's very heartwarming as well just to see how Ma Ingalls keeps the spirits up for the family and the girls, and it really makes you appreciate how things are today because it's a good one to read in lockdown right now, and it's a good one to read with kids to show them that other people throughout history have experienced a lot worse. So it's very heartwarming and you will really just be grateful for everything that we have in the modern world after you read this book. So I'm excited to reread The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder. The next book that I plan to read this winter is Winterhouse by Ben Guterson, and I really didn't know what this book was about. I just happened to see it at the bookstore in the children's department and it looked really cute to me. It's about a little girl named Elizabeth Summers, and she is sent to live at the Winterhouse Hotel, and it's a very sinister hotel, and she's a reader. She loves books and she discovers the library, and in the library there is a book full of puzzles and clues that tell the secret of the winter house. So she sets out to solve the mystery of the winter house. It sounds so cute and it reminds me a lot of the Greenglass house, which I'm currently reading and enjoying. So this will be fun to read along with the Greenglass house. And I really enjoy the illustrations in this one. So they're just really nice and cute and cozy, and they are peppered throughout the book. So even the end papers are very wintry. So I think this is going to be a fun one to save after I read some heavier classics coming up. The next book that I plan to read this winter is The Winter Sea by Susanna Kearsly, and I really enjoy Susanna Kearsly's writing. She is one of my favorite historical fiction writers. The first book that I read by her was Mariana, which I adored. It's a historical romance that is set in the present and in the past, and it's a very beautiful book. Her writing reminds me a lot of Daphne du Maurier, so I consider Susanna Kearsly kind of like a modern Daphne du Maurier. Her books are full of romance, they're full of suspense, and then they have that like gothic vibe to them as well. So this one I believe takes place in Scotland. I think it's about a young writer named Carrie McClelland, and she is staying at a Scottish castle. So how fun is that? And she is researching her book about the Jacobite uprising, where the exiled James Stuart returns to Scotland to reclaim his crown. So I don't know much of the history about James Stuart and the Jacobite uprising, but I'm sure I will learn it from this book, as well as be entertained by an excellent romance. So really looking forward to The Winter Sea by Susanna Kearsly. The next books that I'm reading are classics, and the first classic is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, and this edition is one of the Thomas Nelson Seasons edition. I think it's a part of the winter season, and I love this gorgeous cover. The Thomas Nelson editions are published every season, so winter, spring, summer, fall. You get the idea. And they're all just classic books that have these laser cut dust jackets. And I've wanted one of these books for the longest time. So when I saw A Tale of Two Cities at Barnes & Noble, I knew that I had to have it. And so far I'm about 100 pages in, excuse me as I set it down, and I'm loving the story so far. And I know a lot of people don't really like A Tale of Two Cities in comparison to Charles Dickens' other novels that are more quirky, but I'm really enjoying it so far. I think it's really pertaining to the world right now, and I'm enjoying it a lot, especially that opening line, right? It was the best of the times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. I mean, that is describing 2020 and 2021 so far perfectly. And I like a lot of the points that Charles Dickens is making about politics, about society, about the hypocrisy of people, and how history repeats itself. So I'm anticipating giving this book in particular 5 out of 5 stars. I can already tell it's a 5-star read for me. The next book that I plan to read this winter is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, and this is another classic that I am ashamed I have not read yet, just like A Tale of Two Cities. But I have read other Dickens in the past. I have never read any Russian literature, and as an English major, as a former teacher, I am so embarrassed by that because I've never had an occasion to read this book. I didn't have to read it in school. I did not have to read it in a book club or for any projects, and I never was assigned to read this with students. So I don't know what it's about. I am familiar with the story. I know it's about a woman who has an affair. I know it has a very tragic ending at a train station, but I don't know anything else about it other than that. And I know it has very difficult Russian names, so I think keeping track of all the characters in this book is going to be the hardest thing for me, but I'm excited about it. And you know, as they say, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, because my Penguin Deluxe Classics edition is over 800 pages long, so I'm extremely intimidated by this book, but I promise that 2021 is the year that I am going to read it once and for all. The next book that I plan to read this winter that I'm very excited for is Tennant of Wallfell Hall by Anne Bronte. And I have wanted to read something by Anne Bronte for the longest time. I am fascinated by Anne Bronte, especially how she navigated her life in between these really genius sisters, Charlotte Bronte and Emily Bronte. So is her writing intelligent like Charlotte, or is it more emotional like Emily? Because I'll tell you right now, I'm not a huge fan of Wuthering Heights, not one of my favorite classics, but I love Charlotte Bronte's writing, so I'm just curious how Anne is going to be. And I picked Tennant of Wallfell Hall because a lot of people have talked about this book as being one of the first feminist classics. I believe it's about a woman who leaves an abusive marriage, and so I'm fascinated by that. So how did this woman leave her husband during this time period when divorce was a big no-no, not only in society, but with the church? So I think it's going to be a really fantastic read, and to be honest with you, I'm so excited about this book, more so than many of the others I'm mentioning today. The next book that I plan to read this winter is Gilead by Marilynne Robinson, and this is another one I've been saving for this time of year. I think it just fits the cozy, wintry days, and I think it is about a minister who is on his deathbed, and he's revisiting his life and telling the story of his life to his son. And so he's going over all the lessons he learned as a minister and as a father and a husband, and it's supposed to be very beautifully written. So I don't know anything other than that about it, and I'm excited to see what it's like because everyone says the writing is just gorgeous in this, and I do love good writing. So I didn't think this was a good book to read during the summer, like on the beach. I did think that it was perfect for the winter because I don't know about you, that's when I like to think about the meaning of life, is on these long wintry days. And finishing things off is some fairy tale retellings, the first of which is Snow and Rose by Emily Winfield Martin. And I am so late to the party on this book. I think I'm the last person on BookTube, on Bookstagram, that has read this book. And I think I suspect why everyone likes it, because the cover is so gorgeous. But I didn't realize how many illustrations were in this book until I actually bought it at the bookstore. And Emily Winfield Martin's illustrations are stunning and reason enough to buy this book. Her watercolors, they're just so whimsical and otherworldly. I don't even know how to describe them to you. So I've heard mixed reviews about the story itself, but I believe that it was worth the money just for the illustrations. And I don't know anything about Snow White and Rose Red, about that fairy tale. I've never read the original Brothers Grimm story, so it might be interesting to read that first and then read this retelling. But it does sound really good, and I am excited about it. The next book that I plan to read this winter is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This is another one that's been on my TBR for the longest time. A lot of my favorite booktubers have talked about it, how much they love it, how much they enjoyed it, and I have never gotten around to it yet. It has been on the TBR for 2-3 years. And I think that this year is finally the year I will read it, because it takes place in Russia during the winter, in the forest, in the cabin in the woods, and that sounds very wintry to me. I'm not sure what it's about. I think it's about a young girl named, what's her name? Vasilisa, if I'm pronouncing that right, and her mother dies, her father remarries an evil stepmother, and Vasilisa goes off on this adventure into the wilderness. So I'm excited to read it, and yeah, cross it off the TBR once and for all. Thank you everyone for joining me for my winter TBR. So the snow is on its way, and I'm going to be housebound very soon. But as you can see, I have plenty of books to keep me company and plenty of tea that I can drink. So it's all good. Thank you everyone, and have a terrific day.